It has been a constant challenge for land-scarce Singapore to optimize the use of space for both commercial and housing purposes. One solution that has struck a perfect balance between the two is mixed dwellings. If we listen to our walls, we will discover that the earliest form of mixed dwellings in Singapore are shophouses. They were mainly constructed between 1840 and 1960. Back in the early days, shophouses and not HDB flats were where the majority of Singaporeans lived in.
My interest is in cultural historical landscapes of Singapore and Southeast Asia. And so, I have, been involved to a large extent with essentially looking at how landscapes change over time in Singapore. I think shophouses are quite unique to Asia because it was the first kind of building to provide a mixed development of the integration of home and workplace. When we say shop, it means many things. It doesn't mean just a retail shop. It could have been a wholesale shop. It could be a shop that deals with services. All right, it could be a barber shop. So there was a very big range of particular activities that were organized within the shophouse. The first prototype shophouses were built on a very simple Palladian tradition. There's no ornamentation. So for example, if you take a place like Kampong Glam, the shophouses there are very old and they're very low. But later, the shophouses got more ornate. The Palladian tradition was developed to a large extent. And so you have the Ionic traditions of capitals, like the horns of a ram. And then after that, you have more ornate, the Corinthian style tradition. By the 1920s and the 1930s, all right, you have another layer of this Palladian tradition, what is often called the Chinese Baroque tradition. Not only do you have the ornate designs of the Palladian tradition, but you have a lot of floral sort of embossed on the facade of the shophouse. So the Chinese brought in a lot of different parts of nature, flowers, bamboo, stalks, birds. So they became very decorative art pieces in a way.
The Ellenborough Building at Fish Street and Boat Quay was built for Tan Tock Seng in 1845 and named after Lord Ellenborough, Governor-General of India.
The Ellenborough Building was designed and built by architect J.T. Thompson as a means of providing adequate housing for early immigrants.
What you see here is the central shopping mall, and this is the site actually of the Ellenborough buildings here. It's strange, you've got Ellenborough, but the name is central. So there's no actually connection between the name of the shopping complex and obviously what was here before. The particular Ellenborough shop house, which is the prototype building of shop houses, was the first really important shop house building. You could enter and you get into this huge courtyard encased in this triangle shop houses. And all the shop houses are sort of looking into the courtyard. And that's where all the kids used to play. So they were very unique. Here's a very good example of the covered 5-foot ways of shop houses in Singapore. I mean, the 5-foot way was a very, very important characteristic feature of Singaporean shop houses. You don't find these 5-foot ways that were covered in other parts of Asia. Now, the reason why they were covered was because the tropical weather is very hot, and to a large extent, you have obviously a very great degree of rain in this area. So you had to have these 5-foot ways so that pedestrians could actually move within them, as it were.
Like most of Singapore's early architecture, the Ellenborough Building has already entered into the pages of history. However, the memories of Ellenborough Building, Ellenborough Market, and the vibrant and colourful social history of the area continue to live on in many people, especially Mr. Tan Peng Yang, who used to live in a shophouse along Angus Street for more than 20 years.
以前我就住在这边 Angus Street 10号2楼，我们一家人也有10个人，我父母亲还有我兄弟姐妹。我们1985年的时候就被政府赶出去新的政府组屋，然后1985年开始就被拆掉了，改变成现在这座新的建筑物。
The question obviously of conservation and development is always a twin issue in any city. I mean, you know, what do you want to conserve and what do you want to develop? I mean, these are not easy kinds of decisions to make.
在 Ellenborough Building 楼下都是遗放的 office， 楼上都是住他们的家人。新巴萨就在这个 Ellenborough Building 的旁边。以前我还记得新巴萨有一次呢，有一个遗放人买了一条大鲨鱼，他的那个钩搭进他的那个肚皮的时候，一只成人的脚露出来，我们每个人都跑去那边看。以前的新加坡河没有像现在这样清洁。 它的河水是黑很肮脏的，我们的死猫死狗啊，全部都是丢到里面去的。
When the government decided to build the MRT station, they took the Ellenborough Building down, and I guess nobody was consulted, you know, to a large extent. But they could have saved part of the history, as it were. The Ellenborough Building was very important, you know, in a way, because it gives us a very good insight of what, you know, how shophouses used to be.
It is inevitable that the old will have to go in order to make way for the new as our nation progresses. But in the case of shophouses which bore witness to Singapore's cultural and economic development, should we find a way to retain and preserve them instead of just allowing them to become a footnote in our history pages?
所以我们非常怀念这边，如果不被赶的话，我还是永远要住在这一带，而且这边是我从小就。 出世就在这边长大的，所以我很非常可惜的不舍得离开这里。
As these historic shophouses are replaced by gleaming buildings and shopping malls, should we wonder just what these new buildings can bring to Singapore? And are they worth the sacrifice of our architectural legacy? In its constant bid for urban redevelopment, Singapore has tried ways and means of using land adequately to satisfy both commercial and residential needs. Back in the 1970s, combining retail and residential space was virtually unheard of. And the People's Park complex was not only an oddity, but was also one that could have turned out to be a failure. Located in the heart of Chinatown, the People's Park complex has served as a retail haven to residents for over 30 years. The government launched an experiment which allowed private developers to participate in its urban renewal program. The People's Park complex was the very first result of that experiment.
This site was originally a garden. Then in the early 20th century, it became a market. And there were a lot of retail stalls, food stalls on the site. But a big fire erased all these retail and food stalls in the early 60s. In the 1960s, when this building was designed and built, all these high-rise buildings were not there. That Chinatown of that time had a fascination because, you know, it had an ecology of its own. And a lot of visitors who came to Singapore thought that was quite charming. They wanted to see that preserved, you know, but how could it be? In no time, the shophouses would have collapsed. We were designing a very simple building. When we conceptualized it, we were very young and we had a lot of young ideas. We thought, wow, what a great opportunity to be part of this nation-building process. And we felt we got to bring back some of the spirit of this site.
At the time of its completion in 1973, the People's Park complex set several precedents. The complex was the first in Singapore to closely embody Swiss architect Le Corbusier's ideal of high-rise living.
Architecturally, we are influenced by Mies van der Rohe, who is talk about less is more, Corbusier, who likes very robust, simple buildings. It follows the principle of using very basic fundamental materials. The structure becomes the finish itself, and that's why it's sometimes called brutalist architecture.
我是文安珠宝行啦，做了38年，我是无业连啦，就是1970年开的啦，那到现在38年。
因为进驻方以前是第一座大厦嘛，购物中心呢，那个时候啊人潮很多的，这很热闹啊这边，每个晚上啊白天都这么多人来。
It was the first shopping centre in Singapore to have an atrium, a feature that can be seen in almost every shopping mall today.
These two atriums act as the city room of Chinatown. This is where the general public and the residents interact with each other. The first 3 floors are retail, organized in a cluster form around an atrium, and the atrium is 3 and 4 stories, so that the shops on the upper floors are visible to people who move around on the ground floor. The 4th story is offices, and from the 6th story upwards are residential apartments.
我住在这边20多年30年，我住20楼，我们的风景很美的，因为每次过年放烟炮，我们都可以看得到。
When you're in this building, in the atrium of this building, you feel like you're in Hong Kong or you're in Tokyo, because the color within this building is very unorganized, but that's what it is. It gives a buzz. It gives this organized chaos look.
Before this building, everyone called this a Chinatown. Very well-known Chinese word is 珍珠坊. In the olden days, the English-speaking people never bothered to come here. But because of China's progress, gradually this whole area became very popular. It's like a mini China here.
I'd like to show you People's Park Complex from this angle. You can appreciate the public domain which is in this 5-story complex. And from this public space, you see a lot of things happening, because this is a very popular location right in Chinatown.
In present-day Singapore, where shopping malls can be found in every residential estate, can mixed-use buildings go beyond the traditional concept of shopping and living?
We need new forms of mixed development, because the world is getting more and more competitive. Time is getting to be one of the scarcest resource. So if you can integrate different uses, that can cater to a total lifestyle, to be able to work, live and play in very comfortable, inspiring surroundings. This is where architecture, urban environment can help to increase productivity.
在我们在这边认识，从结婚到现在做生意，所以不舍得离开这边了。没有打算搬了，就是在这边养老啊。
With the right planning and tenant mix, developments like the People's Park complex built an image that found wide acceptance among the public. But for buildings whose luster has already faded, can they overcome it to regain their initial success? It is no simple feat designing a building that can house shops, offices, and residences under one roof. But after the initial design process, what does it take for a building to shine and stand out from the crowd? While there have been unqualified successes like the People's Park complex, there are other developments that had to go through long periods of experimentation before finding their niche. Back in the 1970s, the government had plans to develop the coastal land stretching from the Nickel Highway to Beach Road into an upmarket strip of luxury hotels, apartments, and commercial buildings. Heading the Golden Mile was Singapore's very first stepped terrace building.
This place, before the reclamation, there was actually there's no man's land. At that period, it was very apparent of the demand of small shops and small offices, also middle income housing. So they felt that mixed usage of residential, offices, commercial can work as in one building. At that time, our firm has only 3 partners. They are Pei Fing Soon, Koh Seo Chon, and myself. Out of the 3, I am actually carrying out this project. So in that sense, I'm very intimately related to the development of this project.
Modelled after the linear city concept by Spanish urban planner Arturo Soria y Mata, that strip was dubbed the Golden Mile.
So building has in fact hit the headline in international architectural professional press. So this building has been selected as one of the great buildings in the 1970s. In architectural sense, this became a historically acknowledged important building of important significance.
Originally envisioned as an avant-garde vertical city, the Golden Mile complex is now better known as a Thai enclave. Though this building is almost 40 years old, many residents still find it a popular building, and some people wouldn't think of calling anywhere else home. Having both worked and lived here for many years, Andy is very much appreciative of the unique charms of the Golden Mile complex.
When it first started in 1972, this complex has 3 sectors. One is the resident, which is from 16 penthouse all the way down to the 10th floor. Then we have on the 9th floor down to the 4th story, which is office block. And third, down to the ground floor is shopping centers. So we came to Golden Mile because we think that it's interesting to start business here. After being here for 10 years, I decided that it would be a good thing for me to move up here so that I can work a bit longer hours, as well as have a little bit of time. When I need rest, I can just move up to my apartment. This is my house. It's a 2-bedroom room, master room and a small utility room. This is my favorite spot where I used to sit here and enjoy the view. On my left-hand side, you can see the stadium, Kallang River. On my right-hand side, I can see Marina Square and the Singapore Flyer. Isn't that beautiful? What I like about this place is the balcony. Okay, the open space where you can sit here and relax, or you invite some friends here, have a party. The beauty about this building is designed slant this way down. So from the top all the way down, all have a very good view. As well as you get a good morning sun comes into the living room. So in the afternoon, when the sun is on the other side, it doesn't get into the house. I've been staying here for about 28 years. During the 70s, it was beautiful. It's like a typewriter. You have a slanting on one side and straight on the other side. During that time, most of the people who stayed here are owners. But as time goes by, owners move out, new owners come in. They want to maximize the space. So a lot of them cover up the balcony.
There has been criticism in recent years that the complex has become dilapidated and an eyesore to its surroundings.
So if you don't have chaos, you don't have energy. But the chaos should have certain regulated order. But you don't allow chaos, then everything gets very boring. This question was asked actually by Ram Kuhas to me when he was here last year. What do I think of those additions? I thought they are quite charming. I think certain things have to be corrected. Like you should not hang clothes outside.
Of course, it does affect the beauty. Take for instance, if I look down somebody else's rooftop, it's a very unsightly thing, And my neighbor is also with awnings. So if both sides with awnings, then it's like you're cooked up in a flat where you have no space.
With the collective en bloc sale in 2007, Golden Mile Complex, although still strong and outstanding, had its own share of controversy on the subject. While there was significant public and professional pressure to preserve the building, some owners still tried for a collective sale. And this was not the first time it had happened in the last decade.
But this may be a time to examine very seriously whether we can have a longer term stability for this building, and this can only take place if this building is considered as a building to be preserved under conservation order.
This is a very ideal place for me. It can be a retirement home. If this place is still around, I think I will continue to live here.
Having successfully tackled the concept of mixed-use buildings through the early shophouses and later developments like People's Park Complex and Golden Mile Complex, the next version of the mixed-use concept promises to be even bigger and more ambitious than ever.
Marina Bay Sands is going to be the jewel of our portfolio from an architectural standpoint. We selected Moshe Safdie as the architect for this project as a result of his innovative approach to architecture. He's an expert in creating the proper physical structure to fit in with the environment in which it's situated. Integrated resort is a term that was invented by the Singapore government to convey the message to people that this type of a project is not simply a casino, but instead it's a casino that has many different options wrapped around it. In fact, the casino represents less than 3% of the actual space within the integrated resort.
With theaters, retail malls, restaurants, a museum, a hotel and a convention center spread out over 570,000 square meters, does the Marina Bay Sands signify a whole new era of mixed-use development in Singapore?
Ultimately, when this project is completed, it will bring a sense of excitement and entertainment to Singapore, which has never been here before, and ultimately lead to a massive amount of new tourism coming into Singapore.
As we move forward, we can expect our architecture to reach new levels of innovation in terms of both design and usability. This brings us to the question: how far are we willing to go in the name of innovation?